Hey everyone, we are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers and we really need your help. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button as we get started. Smash that like button right now and do not scroll past this video, because what we are about to get into is the kind of story that only comes around once in a generation, the kind that gives you chills, makes you proud to be a sports fan, and reminds you exactly why we watch this beautiful game in the first place. There is a 20-year-old girl from Quezon City in the Philippines who is currently making the entire tennis world lose its collective mind. Legends are talking about her. Icons are studying her. The biggest names in the history of this sport are sitting in rooms and on podcasts and in press conferences, looking at cameras, and saying without a single shred of hesitation that this young woman is something the tennis world has never seen before. Her name is Alexandra Eala, Alex Eala, and she has just reached a career-high ranking of world number 29. She is the highest-ranked Filipino tennis player in the entire history of the sport. And right now, former world number 1 Andy Roddick has gone absolutely viral after bringing her onto his podcast and delivering a verdict that sent shockwaves from Manila to Miami and everywhere in between. So subscribe to this channel right now if you have not already, hit that notification bell, and let's get into the full, extraordinary, goosebump-inducing story of Alex Eala and why the entire tennis universe cannot stop talking about the pride of the Philippines. Let's start at the very beginning, because you cannot fully appreciate the magnitude of where this young woman is standing right now without understanding the ground she had to cover to get here. Alexandra Meñiego Eala was born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City, Philippines. She is 20 years old. That is not a typo. She is 20 years old and she is ranked in the top 30 of the entire world. She learned to love tennis in a country where the sport had virtually no professional tradition at the elite level. The Philippines, a nation of over 110 million people with one of the most passionate sporting cultures on the planet, had never produced a single player, not one, not in the entire recorded history of professional tennis, who broke into the top 100 of either the WTA or the ATP rankings. Not one person. 110 million people, and no one had ever cracked the top 100. Until Alex Eala arrived and didn't just crack it. She absolutely demolished it. The story of how she got here begins with a decision that took incredible courage. She left the Philippines as a 13-year-old girl and moved to Mallorca, Spain, to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy, one of the most elite and demanding tennis training environments on the entire planet. Think about that for a moment. 13 years old. A different country. A different continent. A different language. Away from her family, away from everything familiar, training alongside some of the most talented young players on the planet with the legendary Rafa Nadal himself watching over the program. Most people would fold under that kind of pressure. Most people would pack their bags and go home inside a month. Alex Eala absorbed it, thrived in it, and let it forge her into something genuinely extraordinary. The junior circuit gave the first glimpses of what was coming. She won the Australian Open girls doubles title in 2020 at just 14 years old. She followed that up by winning the Roland Garros junior singles title in 2021 at 16. And then in 2022, she became the first Filipino to ever win a major junior title by claiming the US Open Girls Singles Championship. The junior game was simply not big enough to contain her. But the gap between junior success and professional dominance at the WTA level is massive. It is a chasm that swallows talented players whole every single year. Players who light up the junior circuit and then disappear completely when the professionals start hitting back harder, faster, and with far more tactical sophistication. Alex Eala was not going to be one of those cautionary tales. She had something different. Something the junior trophies hinted at but couldn't fully capture. And then came Miami. March 2025. The Miami Open. One of the biggest and most prestigious tournaments on the entire WTA calendar. A WTA 1000 event that attracts the full field of the world's elite players. Alex Eala walked in ranked number 140 in the world. She walked in with a wildcard entry, meaning she was given a spot in the draw by the tournament organizers, a vote of confidence that is typically extended to rising local stars or players with special circumstances. Most wildcards play 1 or 2 matches and exit. The competition at that level is simply too fierce, too experienced, and too tactically developed for a player ranked 140th in the world to sustain a run. Eala proceeded to do something nobody saw coming. She beat Yelena Ostapenko, the 2017 French Open champion. She beat Madison Keys, the 2025 Australian Open champion, the woman who had just won the most recent Grand Slam. And then, in one of the most electrifying moments in recent WTA history, she walked onto the court against Iga Swiatek, at the time the world number 2, a 5-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most dominant forces the women's game has ever produced, and won. 6-2, 7-5. It was not close. It was not lucky. It was a 20-year-old from the Philippines dissecting one of the greatest players alive with the kind of composure, intelligence, and fearlessness that you simply cannot teach. She went all the way to the semifinals, where she lost to Jessica Pegula, but by that point it didn't matter. The tennis world had already been turned completely upside down. She became the first Filipino to reach the semifinals of a WTA 1000 tournament. She became the first Filipino to break into the WTA Top 100. She did both things in the same week, in the same tournament, against 3 former Grand Slam champions. And when it was all over, she quietly went back to work. That is the part of this story that gets lost in the noise of the highlights and the rankings and the viral moments. After Miami 2025, with the entire tennis world suddenly paying attention, with her name trending across social media in the Philippines and around the globe, with sponsorship inquiries flooding in and cameras following her everywhere, Eala went back to work. She kept training. She kept competing. She kept losing some matches and winning others and learning and growing and getting better. She finished the 2025 season ranked number 50 in the world. She won her first WTA 125 title in Guadalajara. She reached the final in Eastbourne. She made history at the US Open by becoming the first Filipino to win a main draw match at a Grand Slam tournament. Every milestone, every achievement, adding another brick to the foundation of what is becoming one of the most exciting careers in tennis. And then 2026 arrived and everything accelerated. She reached the semifinals in Auckland. She reached the quarterfinals in Abu Dhabi. She took down world number 8 Jasmine Paolini in Dubai, the reigning French Open champion, in just 60 minutes in a display of clinical, aggressive baseline tennis that had commentators scrambling for superlatives. She reached the round of 16 in Indian Wells. And after all of that remarkable early season form, on March 16, 2026, the WTA rankings updated and revealed what everyone who had been watching already knew. Alexandra Eala, the girl from Quezon City who moved to Spain at 13, was officially the world number 29, the highest-ranked Filipino tennis player in the history of the sport. She did not just break the record. She rebuilt the ceiling entirely. And it was into this context, this extraordinary, history-making, nation-defining rise, that Andy Roddick invited her onto his Served podcast. For those who may not know, Andy Roddick is not just any podcast host. He is a former world number 1. A Grand Slam champion. A man who competed at the absolute pinnacle of professional tennis for over a decade, who faced legends across the net and knows better than almost anyone alive what genuine elite talent looks and feels like up close. When Andy Roddick is genuinely impressed by a tennis player, it means something. And he was not just impressed by Eala. He described his conversation with her as a lesson in self-awareness. He sat across from this 20-year-old and was in absolute awe, not just of her results, not just of the Miami Miracle, but of the human being sitting in front of him. The maturity, the intelligence, the groundedness, the complete and total absence of ego that you would absolutely not expect from someone who had just spent 12 months becoming one of the most talked about figures in global tennis. Roddick was passionate about pointing out something that many casual fans might not fully appreciate about what Eala has accomplished. The Philippines had never produced a top 100 player. Not in the WTA. Not in the ATP. A country of over 100 million people, passionate about sport in ways that most nations can only dream of, had simply never had a tennis player who could compete at the elite level, until this young woman appeared and began doing it in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Roddick made clear that the context of that national journey makes every single thing she has achieved carry a weight that goes far beyond personal accomplishment. She did not just make it for herself. She made it for every Filipino who ever picked up a tennis racket and wondered if someone from their country could ever compete on the world stage. What was equally striking was the conversation about how Eala handles the weight of her own fame. Because the fame is real and it is enormous and it would crush most 20-year-olds before they even knew what hit them. At the 2026 Australian Open, she played her first-round singles match at Court 6, a smaller intimate venue at Melbourne Park. The Australian Open organizers had massively miscalculated. The lines of fans who came to watch Eala stretched hundreds of yards through the grounds. People who could not get in watched on big screens outside. Thousands of Filipino fans, who had flown to Melbourne or who live in the vast Filipino diaspora around Australia, packed every available inch of that venue. Martina Navratilova said publicly that the organizers had made a scheduling mistake by not putting Eala on a bigger court. Novak Djokovic himself, the greatest of all time, the man who has won 10 Australian Open titles, took notice and called it a good problem to have. Eala's pre-tournament press conference at the Australian Open polled in 178,000 YouTube views, more than Carlos Alcaraz, more than Jannik Sinner, more than Coco Gauff, more than any other player at the tournament, from a player ranked outside the top 30. When Roddick asked her about all of this, about the crowds, the cameras, the pressure, the weight of being the face of an entire nation, she described the experience of accepting it with a warmth and self-awareness that floored him. She said she noticed the fanbase growing week by week and reached a point where she had to consciously choose to embrace it rather than be overwhelmed by it. She described looking at the videos of the lines at Melbourne Park and being genuinely shocked. She talked about realizing that this was her reality now and choosing gratitude over anxiety. She talked about not knowing how long it would last and being determined to enjoy every single moment of it while it was happening. And then she said something that landed like a thunderclap in the middle of the podcast. Nothing changed much in terms of who I am from 2025 to 2026. It's just that my success kind of skyrocketed. That sentence tells you everything you need to know about why Andy Roddick called it a lesson in self-awareness. Success that skyrockets, fame that explodes, expectations that multiply overnight. These things change people. They peel away layers of authenticity and replace them with performance, with image management, with the careful curation of a public persona that eventually bears no resemblance to the actual human being underneath. Eala looked at a former world number one across a podcast microphone and essentially told him that her superpower is remaining herself regardless of what the scoreboard or the ranking or the crowd size says about her place in the world. And Roddick, who has seen what this sport does to people's psyches at the highest level, recognized exactly how rare and precious that quality is. The tennis legends kept piling on after that. Novak Djokovic weighed in at the Australian Open, acknowledging that Eala had become the biggest tennis player the Philippines has ever produced and that her presence was creating a groundswell of new fans from a country that had previously had almost no connection to professional tennis. He called the massive crowds a good problem to have and expressed genuine enthusiasm about what her rise means for the global growth of the sport. When Djokovic says something like that about a player who is not yet in the world's top 25, you pay attention. The personal dimension of this story adds yet another layer of extraordinary texture. Maria Sharapova, 5-time Grand Slam champion, former world number one of the most iconic figures in the entire history of women's tennis and the idol that Eala grew up studying, had been watching the Filipinas rise closely. Eala had a Sharapova poster on her wall as a child. She completed a school project about her idol in 5th grade. She studied the way Sharapova moved, competed, handled pressure, and refused to back down from anyone. And when Roddick asked her on the podcast to name her dream historical matchup, without a moment's hesitation she said Serena Williams, and then added, and if I could do two from the past, Serena Williams and Maria Sharapova. The girl who grew up with Sharapova's poster on her wall is now ranked in the same conversations as Sharapova was at comparable stages of her career. The student has become something extraordinary in her own right. Here is where things stand right now as of this week. After a strong run at the 2026 Miami Open, the scene of her historic breakthrough 1 year ago, Eala reached the fourth round before losing to Karolina Muchova. Because of the WTA's rolling ranking system, she is expected to drop from her career high of number 29 as she defends the massive points haul from last year's semifinal run. But the trajectory of this career is unmistakable and unstoppable. She is now a seeded player at major tournaments. She is a regular in the second weeks of WTA 1000 events. She is beating top 10 players. She is hitting quarterfinals at a rate that nobody anticipated at this stage of her career. She is 20 years old. She has been competing at the professional level for less than 2 full seasons as a main draw player. The ceiling of what she can accomplish is something that even the most experienced tennis minds hesitate to define, because every time someone sets a boundary for her, she walks through it and keeps going. Roddick saw it close up in that podcast recording and could not stop talking about it afterward. He described her as one of the most genuinely impressive young people he had encountered in years of conversations with elite athletes. And then he said what everyone watching had already been feeling from the moment she walked into Miami as a wild card ranked 140th and started beating Grand Slam champions for sport, that this young woman is something genuinely special. Not just for the Philippines. Not just for Asian tennis. Not just for women's tennis. But for the sport of tennis itself, which desperately needed a player who could open new doors, inspire new fans, represent new possibilities, and do all of that while remaining authentically, beautifully, irresistibly herself. Eala is the face of the Philippines, as Roddick so powerfully declared. But she is also something more than that now. She is the face of every young athlete who ever came from a place where nobody believed it was possible. She is the face of every kid who packed their bags and moved somewhere terrifying because they believed in themselves when nobody else did. She is the face of what happens when extraordinary talent, relentless work ethic, and unshakable self-awareness collide in one extraordinary human being at exactly the right moment in history. The tennis world has been looking for its next great story. It found one. And her name is Eala. Now it is time to hear from you. Were you already an Eala fan before this video? Or is this the moment you officially became one? Do you think she has what it takes to win a Grand Slam? Where do you see her ranking going by the end of 2026? Drop your hottest take in the comments right now because I want every single opinion you have got. If this story gave you chills the way it gave me chills, smash that like button because it helps this channel reach more fans and keeps these stories coming to you every single week. And if you are not already subscribed, what on earth are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button right now and join this community because we are not going anywhere and neither is Eala. The best chapters of her story are still ahead. We will be right here to cover every single one of them. We will see you in the next video.